Good afternoon, everyone. Proud to be joined this afternoon by our Attorney General, Tish James, and our CEO of the MTA, Janno, Lieber. Keeping people safe has always been and always will be my top priority. And anyone who undermines our efforts to protect our people is in for one hell of a fight. Now let's get this. Secretary of Homeland Security, now let me put an emphasis on the words Homeland Security, meaning you protect the homeland. Secretary Kristi Noem is learning that lesson about how hard we're willing to fight. She's learning it the hard way. Twice in the last 2 weeks, she's tried to weaponize the federal government against millions of New Yorkers. And twice, she has failed. First, she tried to claw back $187 million for counter-terrorism funding. Well, when we heard that, I picked up the phone, called President Trump directly, and for a moment we spoke as not just Democrats and Republicans, but we spoke as New Yorkers. And I reminded him how important the memory of 9/11 is, how it's still very much seared in the minds of all New Yorkers, and how we have to continue funding security because we are the #1 terrorist threat destination in America. So the president at that time reversed course and announced plans to restore the funding. And then Secretary Noem tries to defund our police who patrol our subways, our trains, and our buses. Now get this, of the 21 agencies that applied for this guaranteed funding, 21, MTA was the only agency not funded. Coincidence? I don't think so. She actually thought she could zero out what had been a bipartisan transit counterterrorism program that was first recommended by the 9/11 Commission, a program that's kept New Yorkers safe, a program that's been maintained by both Democrat and Republican administrations for over 2 decades. Well, 6 days ago, we stood at the MTA headquarters and called that out for what it was. A shameless attempt to extract revenge on a blue state that happens to have the busiest, most at-risk transit system in the entire country, taking $34 million from the real heroes who really do protect us every single day, and creating a vulnerability for every New Yorker who relies on our subways, trains, and buses. You know, we even sought help from our Republicans in Congress, especially those who represent the districts with commuters at risk. And I asked our Attorney General to immediately file a lawsuit in federal court to stop this illegal action, because the law clearly states that the transit funding, the transit security funding, is to be allocated solely on the basis of risk. And we all know New York remains the biggest terror target in the nation. And we just learned this morning that the judge ruled completely in our favor. In fact, the judge called Secretary Noem's ploy a blatant violation of the law and ordered DHS to pay MTA the money it's owed. And I want to thank the judge for articulating what the law requires and how it cannot be violated. If you read the decision, the judge even opened up with remembrance of the 3,000 lives that were lost on 9/11, only blocks from the courthouse where the ruling was made. Also mentioning the fact that there had been at least 8 terrorist plots on our subway over the last 20 years, all of which have been thwarted, partially because we've had this funding and the training and the personnel in place. Well, the truth is, we shouldn't have to fight this out in court if Republicans had the guts to stand up for the people who elected them to office. You know, Republicans love to call themselves the party of law and order, the party that backs the blue. But if backing the blue really means more than just a bumper sticker or a logo on a hat, then we need action. We need more than just your words. It's about giving law enforcement the tools they need to keep us safe. So here's my simple message to Washington and the Republicans in Congress especially the 7 from our own state of New York. If you're serious about keeping America safe, prove it. Stop the hypocrisy. Stop trying to defund our police. Stop playing political games with people's lives. And stop being silent when Secretary Noem abandons her duty to protect Americans, especially the people you represent. Work for New Yorkers instead of against them. Now, we don't have to agree on everything. I suspect we won't. But we should be able to agree that keeping people safe is non-negotiable. As I said from day one, I'll work with anyone interested in bolstering our public safety efforts. And over the last few years, we've invested over $3 billion for police and safety, giving our officers the best tools, technology, and training they need to keep New Yorkers safe. And we've paired these unprecedented investments with reforms as well. Also, on our subways, we've surged police, covered additional overtime, deployed officers on the overnight trains, and installed 33,000 cameras, platform barriers, LED lighting. All these efforts are paying off. Crime rates are down. Confidence is up. And this summer was the safest summer in our subways in over a decade. We've come too far for anyone to jeopardize our progress or the vital work that still lies ahead. Also, Secretary Noem and anyone planning to continue cutting essential dollars from the state of New York, lawyer up, because we'll see you in court once again. And as you saw today, if you attack New Yorkers, when you put us in harm's way, we will fight back and we will win. Win with an incredible leader of the Attorney General's office, Tish James, who knows how to fight back hard, and win. Madam Attorney General.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. And good afternoon, everyone. I can recall the day on October 1st when the governor had a press conference in front of the Statue of Liberty. And I can recall the night before on September 30th, the last day of the fiscal year, where we filed a lawsuit around 10 p.m. We did not receive official notice. We heard about the cutting of MTA funds on Street's blog. This decision really is an important day for New Yorkers, for every commuter, for every transit worker, and every family that relies on our subways, our buses, and trains every day. There is generally no public interest in the perpetuation of an unlawful agency action, none whatsoever. And a few weeks ago, as I indicated, my office filed this emergency lawsuit after the federal government abruptly cut more than $33 million in anti-terrorism funding for the MTA. The court has now affirmed what we argued from the start, that the decision was unlawful and supported by the facts, in particular that it was in violation of the Procedure Act. And so it's really critically important that individuals understand that the Transit Security Grant Program was established after 9/11 to protect high-risk transit systems like the MTA from potential terrorist grants. And as the governor mentioned, almost 3,000 individuals lost their lives on 9/11. And I can think of no other jurisdiction that is more at risk than New York City, New York State. By law, these funds must be allocated based solely on risk. And there is no transit system in America that faces higher risk or serves more riders than the great state of New York. This ruling restores more than $33 million in critical security funds that will go directly towards protecting millions, I said millions of riders, strengthening cybersecurity, upgrading surveillance and communication systems, and supporting law enforcement, most importantly, in preventing and responding to threats. I want to thank Governor Hochul for her leadership and for her partnership in standing up for New Yorkers. Our office will continue to work together with state and federal partners to ensure that New York receives the resources it needs to keep our transit system and everyone who depends upon it safe from harm. That is our job, and that is why we are prepared to fight back against any additional cuts that harms New Yorkers. Thank you.
Janno.
Listen, I worked at the World Trade Center for 14 years after 9/11. The one thing we knew is that you had to make investments to make sure that that place and New York was safe from any terrorist attack ever again. And we made those investments at the World Trade Center. And thanks to Governor Hochul, we've been making enormous progress in fighting crime in the subways and elsewhere in the transit system. Those are extraordinary statistical accomplishments because of the investments we've made under this governor. It never made sense to be talking about taking money away from those efforts, to take money away from cops, to take money away from the surveillance systems and the cameras that the governor has allowed us and helped us to accomplish, to take money away from communications. It really never made any sense. We are making huge progress, but you cannot forget that the transit system is one of the targets that the bad guys tend to focus on. Remember London back in 2005. Remember even Tokyo back in the late 90s. Remember what happened in Madrid. This is not a game. This is an area that must be protected. We are doing it, and taking money away from it never made any sense. I am so grateful to the governor and to the Attorney General for making sure that we will continue to receive these needed federal funds so that we can invest in cops, invest in communications, and the technology that protects every transit rider. Thank you both.